What's going on, y'all? Sean of Mass Swap Tutoring here, and I want to talk about the time when I was in high school when I dealt with test anxiety. Before I continue, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and let's get into it. So, we get a lot of students at Mass Swap Tutoring who deal with some level of test anxiety, where maybe they learn the stuff and they kind of learn it okay, but then they get to the test and maybe they kind of panic or something happens and they kind of like start marking things contrary to what they've learned, and what they know doesn't necessarily translate to what's on the test. So the kind of test anxiety I dealt with was not really like that. It wasn't that per se, but it probably is more accurately referred to as like an OCD. Now, granted, none of this stuff is diagnosed, it's just kind of self-diagnosis or whatever. So, take it for what it is. But my point is I experienced a type of test OCD. If you don't know what OCD is, it's obsessive compulsive disorder, where sometimes you do different kind of things. You have some sort of concern or fear that something, like for example, that maybe you lock the door, but then you like, did I really lock the door? So you go and you check it multiple times, and you have to check it so many times to kind of get some sort of peace, but you never really get peace. And so what happened with me was that I would get concerned. Say you're taking a test like the SAT, and you have, at least back in the day, you would have a test booklet, and then you would have an answer sheet, and you're marking answers for the SAT, and you're looking to see what answer choice you want to mark in the book. So I had this concern. I think it was like a what if popped in my mind. It's like, what if you and this actually started, it didn't start with like standardized tests. It started in with like a test in some class. But it's like, what if you're looking at number 8, but then it turns out you're marking number 7, and then you were like one off for every one, and you got all these things wrong. Like, what if that happened? And the thought of that, I think I heard that maybe that happened before to somebody, maybe a teacher mentioned something. And like the reality of that being something that could happen got in my mind and made me very concerned. It's like, what if I did that? And then all of a sudden I got my stuff back and I got all these wrong. And so again, like, I never experienced that before, you know. Um, at least I don't believe I did. But the fact that that could happen was something that kind of got in my mind. And so what I would do is I would go and, okay, here's number 2 in the book. Here's number 2 on my test. I'm marking that, and number 2, number 2, number 2, number 2, number 2, and 2. So I'm like looking, checking, checking, triple, quadruple checking my work and taking lots of time. Now, it sounds kind of silly now, and thankfully I can laugh about it now, but back then it was a real thing. And it was a real concern. It was very bothersome. And so what happened was, on the SAT, that ended up being very problematic. Why? Because the SAT is a time test. And again, it was done on paper. So like, think about that. If you're going through a test and then you're like, okay, I'm looking at number 2 here. I'm looking at number 2. Number 2 is B. I'm marking B. Am I sure? All this checking and kind of checking it, it's like causing me to take lots of time on every problem. And so what was happening with me, one of my biggest issues with the SAT is that I was taking too much time on problems and I wasn't finishing the sections. So like, as you know, that can be problematic with the SAT, because with it being timed, and also being that if you don't get to answer something, if you don't get to mark something, then you miss an opportunity for points. You don't lose points, but you miss an opportunity for points. So I would do decently on the SAT. It's just that I would still like not necessarily mark all the, I wouldn't get through the section. So that was the biggest issue with me. Now, excuse me. So now, how did I conquer that? How did I conquer that anxiety? Like I said, mine wasn't like some of the what I see a lot of people dealing with when they come to math swap tutoring. But how did I deal with that kind of OCD way of taking tests? So basically, I just had to decide that I wasn't going to do all that checking anymore. So like I had to trust that when I was taking the test and looking at the answer choices and marking my test paper or whatever, I just had to trust that I was doing the right thing. Now it sounds kind of simplistic, and maybe people who deal with this stuff on a professional level can articulate it better than I can, but I'm articulating it from my own personal experience. I had to look and be like, I'm marking the right one. I'm marking the right one. And like literally I had to face the fact that yes, that kind of thing is possible, but if I mess up, I mess up. But like I just had to trust that I was marking the right thing. And 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 just to cut to the chase, my worst fear never happened. So I had to face that. I had to take whatever tests and I had to mark stuff and just face the fear that, without me checking, I just had to face the fear that the concern about being one off and marking everything the wrong way could happen. But I just had to know that I was just doing what I thought I was doing. And without doing all the was it the compulsive part, checking. So I just kind of do whatever I did. And the cool thing about, and I've actually encountered this same kind of tendency in other aspects of my life or whatever. And every time I've had to kind of come back and reassure myself the same way. And what I find is when I go against that whole anxious part that's telling me, what if, you got to check, you got to check. When I just decide to ignore that part of me, one, those worst fears don't happen, and two, eventually all that kind of concern and anxiety and stuff goes away. And I still, if I'm honest, I still get tempted every now and then with that whole what if. But I choose in the moment to be like, you know what? I'm not gonna let that concern me when I'm taking this test or whenever I'm taking this action, taking care of this, taking care of that, because I'm just not going to be anxious. I'm just going to keep on going and just keep it moving. Just because something is possible doesn't mean that I'm doing it, and it's just going to be all right. I'm just not going to even put my energy into trying to check and double, triple, quadruple check after myself. So anyway, like I said, this is probably a little different than the kind of test anxiety a lot of other people are dealing with, but I'm sure it's helpful to somebody. So let me know if this applies to you and if it's helpful to you. Okay. And also make sure you share it with somebody else as well. All right. Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you need math tutoring or you need SAT math help, look in the description to find out how you can sign up today. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you stay in touch with Math Swap Tutoring on YouTube. Have a good one.